Hey there, deep divers, it's Julie B, and today I'm diving into the series finale of The Handmaid's Tale, which actually functions more as an epilogue and a segue to Hulu's forthcoming spin-off series, The Testaments, while the penultimate episode was really, in my opinion, the unofficial finale to the action part of the story. And it's aptly titled simply The Handmaid's Tale, as June prepares to start writing her story that we just spent 6 seasons watching. The series has been adapted from Margaret Atwood's novel, which depicts the story of June and is told strictly from her perspective. Now, the series was adapted from Margaret Atwood's novel, which depicts the story of June and is told strictly from her perspective. Readers only knew what June knew and experienced firsthand. But for the sake of a more complete and long-lasting story, the TV series expanded that perspective to include events in which June was not personally involved. For instance, when June was still stuck in Gilead, we saw events happening involving refugees and Luke in Canada, and after June escaped to Canada, we saw events happening in Gilead. But make no mistake, this is and has always still been June's story at its core. After 6 harrowing seasons in dystopian handmade hell, we've come to the end of the road, and it was much more satisfying than I ever expected. I knew we wouldn't see the fall of Gilead because there wasn't enough time to depict such an event, and because I knew that the spin-off series The Testaments, based on Atwood's sequel book, is currently in production. I also figured that June would not reunite with her daughter Hannah, so it was hard to imagine a deeply satisfying ending to the series. And was the finale as epic and action-packed as the penultimate episode? No, but I was okay with that. I was more than okay with that because, as I said in my deep dive on that episode, it didn't really matter much what happened in the finale at that point. It was already a mission accomplished for me. The series already landed the plane. Well, at least metaphorically speaking. By the end of that penultimate episode, Execution, every single major character had been put to their ultimate test and either rose to the occasion, as with June, Commander Lawrence, Aunt Lydia, and Serena Joy, or fell tragically short, as with Nick Blaine. There was the showdown between June and Wharton, the epic gallows scene with June's rallying cry to rise up. Lydia's condemnation of Gilead's godless men, Mayday and the U.S. military descending on Boston. Serena Joy's stunning move to help the resistance, Lawrence's ultimate sacrifice, and June finally letting Nick go, literally letting him go to his death. What more was there to do after all that, and in the span of just one remaining episode? So I was perfectly satisfied with the series finale functioning as an epilogue and a segue to the Testaments. June's voiceover tells us that after only 19 days, Boston fell into the control of America again, even before Marines landed to assist. The battle was over before it had even begun because Gilead had no leaders left in the city. All the Warhawks were gone, thanks to Lawrence's sacrifice to take out that plane full of commanders. As June says, God always requires a sacrifice. In this case, 2 sacrifices. Lawrence went out as a martyr to the revolution because he sacrificed his life for the cause. And Nick was the sacrifice that June needed to make because she had to let him die. June's voiceover goes on to tell us that this is only the beginning. Mayday plans to liberate Massachusetts, New York, moving west to Ohio, Kansas, someday Colorado, and then Hannah. June's main focus is, of course, Hannah, her firstborn child who is still trapped out there. As I predicted in my episode 9 deep dive, June will clearly never stop fighting in this revolution, at least as long as Hannah is still trapped. So in the first scene, even as Boston celebrates the chill-inducing unfurling of an American flag, June isn't as jubilant as the people around her are. She's also still focused on everyone else, all the other trapped women and children of Gilead, and Janine, who's been missing since their almost hanging. As a crowd burns the Gilead flag in a bonfire, June thinks back over her love affair with Nick and watching him go to his death. It's as if she's watching the last remnants of her love for him go up in flames as well. It's also fitting that June burns her handmaid dress in a fire on what appears to be the same bridge where she once shared a dramatic Hollywood-style kiss with Nick, using a 360-degree pan around them. That needed to go. Her eyes needed to open, because this is what the show is really about, freeing herself from that infernal handmaid's dress, not a love story. As for June and Luke, it's apparent that they're going their separate ways. They realized this season that their marriage has been broken since they lost Hannah, and they finally both faced June's love for Nick. So they're standoffish with each other, there's no affection, and they act more like casual friends than a married couple at this point. I mean, there's more affection between June and Moira than June and Luke at this point. Luke is laser-focused on the revolution, helping to get the power turned back on in Boston, and about to head to New York to assist Mayday with the plans to topple Gilead there next. June is impatient to try to get Hannah, but Luke reminds her that the way to get her back is to beat Gilead one place at a time. He also plans to get Logan Airport open again, which means they can fly in June's mother and Holly for a visit. Surprising they think it's safe enough to do that so soon, and to be honest, monumental things happen in these final 2 episodes that are a bit unrealistic and rushed, but I'm willing to suspend my disbelief after 6 seasons of harrowing realism and horror. I think the show just took a bit too long to get the Revolution storyline started, and wound up rushing to complete it in a realistic way. A bit too much time spent in Canada in Season 5, I think. Still focused on Hannah, as she should be, June asks for an update from Tuello, and he says there's been a big shift in the Gilead chain of command. Due to the start of the war against Gilead in the east, most of the Western District commanders were promoted, including Mackenzie, who's moving to D.C. with his wife and Hannah. That brings Hannah geographically closer, which is excellent news, as Mayday is fighting Gilead from east to west. As for Janine, the eyes had taken her after the gallows scene, and they don't know her status at first. And for some unknown reason, the eyes also had Lydia but let her go, which doesn't make sense considering Gilead had been about to hang her in episode 9, but perhaps this will be explained in the spin-off series The Testaments. Not surprisingly, Lydia is finding out what she can do about Janine and has been in contact with Tuello. She's clearly on the side of the revolution now, woken up out of her brainwashed state by her maternal love for Janine. In an emotional scene later in the episode, June and Tuello finally meet with Gilead forces who actually hand over Janine and, in a shocking twist, her daughter Charlotte as well. Janine is like a little sister to June, who is overjoyed that she's all right. It's unclear how this deal came to pass, but Lydia is involved in it and asks June to take care of Janine and Charlotte. And once again, we have to suspend our disbelief that this deal was actually successful and that Naomi Putnam, of all people, willingly gave up Charlotte, who she saw as her daughter and named Angela. Naomi has always been a detestable, clueless follower of Gilead and has never shown signs of any real character growth. So the fact that she gave Charlotte to Janine is pretty far-fetched, but I'll take it. Again, I think we've seen enough cold, hard realism and earned this win. And if anyone deserved a happy ending, it's poor, pitiful Janine. If you really think about it, she's suffered the most out of anyone, really, from the start of the series when one of her eyes was removed just for talking back to Aunt Lydia. This broke her spirit and reduced her to a childlike, naive state for much of the series, until finally in Season 5 she told off Naomi, the woman who had stolen her child, and later told off Aunt Lydia in Season 6. I think deep down, Lydia developed a maternal love for Janine as a result of deep-seated guilt for what she did to her. Out of all our female characters who were trapped in Gilead, in the end she was the only one who was still stuck there after everyone else we came to know had either died or escaped to Canada. And she wound up at Jezebel's, where women endure the most physical and sexual abuse out of everyone, in terms of just pure frequency. It's interesting how June faces Lydia and Janine here, just as she did in the Season 1 finale, but this time Lydia is there to help Janine instead of harm her. In that season 1 finale, Lydia had ordered the handmaids to stone Janine to death for endangering her child. She had almost jumped off a bridge holding her daughter who had been taken from her. Lydia thought that she was following the word of God, but she clearly didn't want to do this and was tearful about it then. June faced her down and dropped her stone, refusing to kill Janine. Then all the other handmaids followed suit. And what a turnaround here now. This time Lydia has helped to save Janine's life instead of helping to end it, with June involved once again. As June thanks Lydia for her help, she says, "Blessed is the woman who does not walk in stride with the wicked," paraphrasing Psalm 1, line 1, which means avoiding the company, lifestyle, and ways of the wicked, a warning against being influenced or controlled by those who reject God's laws and principles. This quote is really apropos for the moment because Lydia now realizes that the leaders of Gilead are in fact wicked, godless men, as she exclaimed in the gallows scene. They're just a bunch of hypocritical frauds, and this is June reminding her of this fact as they part ways, warning her not to be pulled back into the cult because it's run by men who are twisting God's words to justify their appalling actions against women. Going forward, I believe Lydia will continue to assist the May Day resistance from within the Gilead system. Now, I had 2 major bones to pick with this series that I discussed in my first deep dive from Season 6, and I'm so pleased to say that both of these issues were rectified in the end. One was the romanticizing of June and Nick's relationship, and the other was the apparent redemption arc and ridiculously good fortune of Serena Joy. I've been saying in all of my videos that Serena has never shown true remorse and isn't deserving of redemption or a happy ending after everything she's done. And she certainly doesn't get a cushy happy ending here. After being taken into protective custody by Tuello, I was worried that Serena would once again have impossibly good fortune and land on her feet easily once again. Tuello has seemingly had a crush on her all along, and he's ridden to her rescue like a white knight several times. But here she is, living in a homeless shelter with her baby Noah, and next to nothing left to her name other than him. No earthly possessions left to speak of. It's a shame for the innocent baby, of course, but for her, it's truly poetic justice to see her wind up this way, because all she ever wanted in life was a baby of her own, and she was willing to enslave the entire country full of women if that's what it took to have one for herself, literally helping to write the laws of Gilead that created the handmaid system. And she physically abused June as a handmaid in her home, slapping her and shoving her more than once, including this time when June's head slammed into a door frame and started bleeding. Serena blamed her when she found out Fred had taken her to Jezebel's with him, as if she had a choice. Serena was only kind to June when she managed to get pregnant. Well, Serena, in the end, you got yourself a baby, but you've lost everything else, and now you have to struggle. It's still more than you deserve, if you ask me, being able to raise your baby and be free. You deserve to be in prison for the SA of June. When June visits Serena at the shelter, Serena congratulates her on her victory, and June says none of it could have happened without her. And yes, I will give credit to Serena for stepping up and coming over to the side of the resistance at last, telling June about the commander's flight to DC so that Mayday could take them out. Otherwise, the revolution would have been over before it even began. Using the famous quote, "I have become death, destroyer of worlds," Serena isn't exactly proud of this, though, noting that she's helped Boston fall twice now, to Gilead and now back to America. But at least she's taking some responsibility for her actions. Serena offers condolences to June for the loss of Nick, but June's eyes are wide open about him now, and I'm so proud of her for responding, "Nick reaped what he sowed. He led a violent and dishonest life." But Serena defends him, saying, "You know, if Nick ever thought he had a choice, he would have chosen you." But I call bullshit on that. Nick had the chance more than once to choose June. He even admitted as much to Lawrence on the plane, saying that June tried to convince him to give up Gilead many times, and Lawrence told him he should have listened to her. Especially before Nick had the complication of a pregnant wife. He could have left Gilead behind, or at least made an effort to do so. And let's not forget, Nick was a crusader in the military coup that installed Gilead in the first place. Then he was an eye. Then he rose through the ranks to become a commander, thereby complicit in this vile place's abuses. He made his choice time and again. He chose fascism, and he could have chosen June. So he sealed his own fate in the end. But back to Serena. It's also time to finally pay the piper for her too. She gets to live and raise her son, but she's a woman without a country now. She tells June she can never go back to Gilead because too many people want her dead now. Canada and the EU won't give her a passport. So she says, "Looks like I'm just nobody." And this is a tough pill to swallow for a megalomaniac like her. But June kindly replies, "You're his mother. Just be that," referring to baby Noah. And it's so fitting that this is what it's come to for Serena. Again, it's poetic justice. She has been a narcissistic megalomaniac from the start, believing herself to be an exalted, messianic figure chosen by God to be a leader. But now she's just a nobody. Her only role now is as a mother. Tuello sends Serena and Noah to a UN refugee camp, and her fate is entirely uncertain, as he's working on a solution to the problem of getting her a passport. Once again, Tuello pulls the white knight routine and promises that he'll find her, but it has to be a hard pill to swallow for this megalomaniacal woman who's always gotten off on power trips, first over Handmaids and then this season over her status in New Bethlehem. As Serena says goodbye to June, she finally does what I've been calling for in my deep dives all season long, and personally as a fan for years now. She offers June a sincere apology for what she did to her as a handmaid, tearing up as she says, quote, "When I recall some of the things that were done to you and the things that I did and that I forced you to do, I'm ashamed," actually taking responsibility for what she personally did to June. June tells her that she should be ashamed. While acknowledging that mere words can't make up for her actions, which is certainly true, Serena says she's sorry. I would have preferred for her to be a bit more specific, as she's still avoiding saying exactly what she did to June with Fred. I wanted to hear her call that exactly what it was, S.A., pure and simple. But it was clear what she meant, and she showed genuine remorse, so I'll take it. And June actually offers her forgiveness, which will ultimately bring her peace in the long run. Recall that after June escaped to Canada, she was consumed by rage for Serena and Fred Waterford. She tried going to a PTSD support group, but nothing could ease her bloodlust and rage that was eating her up inside. Understandably so. By the end of season 4, June got the opportunity to murder Fred with a group of handmaids in no man's land, then walked around all the next day with his blood still all over her, looking completely unhinged. The handmaids beat him to death and strung him up, and it still didn't heal the emptiness inside June, the rage over the abuse she had suffered in the kidnapping of Hannah. Then in season 5, June came close to shooting Serena when she ran into her in Canada, but Luke was there to intervene and whisk her away. June was also acutely aware that Serena was pregnant at the time, so she probably wouldn't have gone through with it anyway. No matter what Serena had done, she was carrying an innocent child, and June didn't want any harm to come to that baby. She even helped Serena deliver that child when she could have left her alone. Forgiving Serena is really the healthiest thing for June, even though Serena's actions were unforgivable. June had told Serena earlier this season that she can't forgive her but wishes she could, so she could finally be free of her. Serena's been living rent-free in June's head, and letting go of her rage now will let her heal and let her move on. In a final scene later in the episode, Serena arrives at the UN refugee camp with next to nothing to her name, having to ask for some clothes and diapers for her baby. She tells Noah that he's all she ever wanted, and says that she's blessed, even as she's been left with nothing else. And if you ask me, it's still a happier ending than she deserves, but once again, I have to reiterate what poetic justice that Serena essentially inspired the coup that created Gilead just so that she could have a child, and in the end, she's been left with nothing other than said child as Gilead crumbles. Remember, Serena was the inspiration behind Gilead's religious dogma that enslaved her own gender. And while she was a true believer, drunk on her own Kool-Aid, she had a stronger motive than just religious conviction at the root of her crusade to create Gilead. She wanted a child. She essentially confessed as much to Lydia earlier this season. Lydia asked her if she had ever given a thought to what would become of the handmaids, and Serena said no. She said she was unhappy and wanted a child. Well, points for honesty at least, but this is a twisted level of selfishness. She had thought she was infertile as she couldn't conceive a child with Fred, and there was a dire fertility crisis plaguing the world at the time. So while she convinced herself that religious dogma justified and necessitated the handmaid system, Serena's biggest motivation was her selfish desperation to have a child at any cost. And with a worldwide fertility crisis, I'm guessing adoption wasn't an option anymore. Serena had no problem having a handmaid when she thought she was infertile, only being kind to June when she thought she was pregnant and when she eventually did become pregnant. Otherwise treating her like garbage from day one and participating in her SA with Fred, as is the custom in Gilead. After finding out June wasn't pregnant yet, Serena once violently dragged her to her room, shoved her on the floor, screamed in her face, and kept her prisoner in there for so long that it amounted to psychological torture. And then, using the handmaid system, of course, she stole June's baby. Even after she actually did the right thing and gave the baby up so that June could smuggle her to Canada, she turned around and did everything she could to try to get the baby back, using the justification that she was counting on June to go to Canada with her instead of sending her with another handmaid. It wasn't until Serena was able to conceive a child of her own that she finally backed off and truly accepted that the baby was June's daughter all along, not hers. When she married Commander Wharton and was faced with a new handmaid in her home, she finally admitted that the handmaid system is wrong and genuinely seems to mean it. But I honestly think that if Serena had never been able to birth her own child naturally, conceive a child herself, I think she would still be on the side of Gilead. This series began heavy on flashbacks to June's memories of Hannah, so it's fitting that the flashbacks return in this episode, bringing the story back around to what's truly at the heart of it all. It was never about June's star-crossed romance with Nick. That was a distraction, and the only reason it even happened was due to June's trauma. I'm so proud of the show for getting Nick out of the way this season and refocusing it back on what really matters in the end. As I said, I believed was still possible in my first season 6 deep dive. At the heart of this series has always been the story of a mother's fight to survive a dystopian regime and try to save her daughter. And while June was able to see Hannah a few times and almost get close to being able to get her out, unfortunately in the end we don't get to see her achieve that goal, tragically. But June has saved so many other innocent women and children over the course of the series, and ultimately became the de facto leader of this revolution. She once promised Hannah that mommies always come back if they get separated, but so far it's been a promise that she just hasn't been able to keep. The most important thing is that she never stops trying, though. She will never stop fighting to reunite with Hannah and save her, even if a reunion may tragically never happen. But there is an unexpected and emotional reunion with someone else. June runs into none other than Emily, her friend and fellow handmaid who had escaped to Canada with June's baby, but went back to Gilead in the end to join Mayday. Emily says she's been a Martha in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which has been a hot spot of rebellion, and she was fortunate enough to make friends with the commander in her household. She's been keeping in touch with her partner and son in Canada, and she didn't just abandon them as it seemed. She says they're the reason that she's fighting. This scene is so incredibly powerful because it parallels a scene that June and Emily had together in the premiere episode of Season 1 at this very location, the infamous wall, back when they were handmaids, and at the time, They were too afraid to even speak freely to each other when they were alone or trust each other, walking back and forth to the market. Bodies hung there on the wall as usual then, too. Back then, Emily had talked about how wonderful it is that Gilead is successfully defeating more of the so-called rebels, or whatever was left of America. Obviously, she didn't mean it, but the handmaids were taught to say things as if from a script, like praise be and under his eye. So it's incredibly poignant now that the two of them have reunited as free women, walking along this same infamous wall, and this time they're talking about how the Americans are successfully fighting Gilead. And instead of innocent people hanging there, guardians' bodies are now hanging. June says that Mayday strung up all the guardians there in Boston. It's pretty dark, giving the guardians a taste of their own medicine. To be honest, I would have preferred it if they were tried with due process, which I doubt they were, and then executed in a different manner to show that Mayday is on a higher moral ground. But being realistic, I don't think it would have been feasible to actually try them in any kind of court, because they don't have that yet. They're just launching a revolution now. June expresses the futile desire to have her life back the way it should have been if Gilead hadn't taken over. As she puts it, they didn't just steal Hannah, they stole her life. Even if they were to improbably get Hannah back, June can never get back all the years she lost with Hannah and with Luke, and she can never erase the suffering she's experienced as a result of that for all of this time. And all of the rage she's felt against all of the people who stole her life won't change any of that. So she's letting go of that rage at this point so that she can start to heal finally. In an inspirational moment, Emily points out the improbability of the fact that the two of them are both alive to see the wall as it is now. Past the area where the guardians are strung up, people have spray painted all over it. There are many messages from former handmaids who are now reclaiming their real names that were stolen from them, along with calls to continue the fight against Gilead and claim freedom. It's an amazing way to take ownership of this space where everyone feared ending up so much, this wall where your body could just be strung up at any time for the smallest offense. Later, imagining what it would be like if there were never a Gilead, June daydreams about herself, Moira, Janine, Rita, and also Alma and Brianna, two handmaids who had died earlier in the series, having fun at a karaoke night and singing Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. This was a heart-wrenching callback to when June talked Janine out of jumping off a bridge in season 1, talking about getting drunk and doing karaoke together one day. Later, June's mom, Holly, arrives with baby Holly to visit June, and we see June essentially saying goodbye to both of them. Because as long as Hannah remains trapped in Gilead, which is now a war zone, June will never stop fighting for her, so she must make the difficult decision to leave Holly in her mother's care indefinitely. She explains to baby Holly, "It's my job to keep you safe, you and your sister. And I have another job too, I think. I think I have to do my best to help keep all the little girls in Gilead safe too if I can. I have to try." She goes on to say that in order to do that, she'll have to leave Holly again because she needs to go places where Holly wouldn't be safe, continuing her work with Mayday. June has always felt driven to do everything in her power to get Hannah back, but her mission is bigger than that now. As she tells Holly, she feels a duty to do whatever she can for all the young girls who are also trapped in Gilead. June's mother, Holly, is upset that she's going back into harm's way because, like June, she always feels the need to keep her daughter safe. No matter how old your children are, a good mother never stops feeling that responsibility. June rightly points out the harsh reality that neither of them are safe. No matter where they are, Gilead will never stop coming for them. And even when they're gone, they'll come for their children and grandchildren. June says, "Fighting may not get us everything, but we don't have a choice, because not fighting Gilead is what got us Gilead in the first place. And Gilead doesn't need to be beaten. It needs to be broken." And that speaks to an important message, I think. Gilead doesn't need to just be beaten using the same methods as them, the oppressed becoming the oppressors. It needs to be broken. Their disgusting cycle of violence needs to be broken. The Americans will never resort to the same kind of measures that Gilead did, their abuses against women. So as uplifting as Mayday's success has been in these last 2 episodes, this is a sobering reminder that it's only the first battle in what will be a long-lasting and extremely difficult war to eradicate Gilead. June also notes that her mother Holly is the one who taught her how to fight, taking her to protests from the time she was a child, and June is carrying on Holly's feminist legacy and refusal to give up fighting for women's rights. Holly tells June how proud she is of her, and in a series of very meta statements, she says that she tells baby Holly June's whole story, how she saved so many women, how she escaped and survived, and that she would know her mother is a warrior. She tells June that she should write a book telling this story, which is the story we've been watching throughout this series. It gets even more meta when June says, "It's not a very good story. There is so much violence and fear and loss." But Holly corrects her to say, and this is true of this entire series, no, it's about never giving up. It isn't a story for the people who haven't lost anyone. They don't need this story. This is the story for people who will never find their babies, the people who will never, ever give up trying. This is the story for them. Write it for our sweet baby girl and our Hannah. Write it for your daughters, June. Tell them who their mother was. I think, as beautiful as this statement is, it sadly foreshadows the fact that June will likely never find Hannah, but she'll still never give up trying. She'll never give up trying to find her baby. Hannah will always be her baby. And it feels like a meta message to many viewers who have struggled to stomach this series or give it a chance due to the brutal violence against women and the darkness of the subject matter, which I completely understand. It's very triggering to a lot of people. The writers of the show are trying to tell us here that, in the end, this show isn't about the darkness, the cruelty. It's about the courage of this incredible woman who refuses to ever give in to that darkness and will forever fight for justice, even against the most insurmountable of odds and in horrific circumstances. There have been brutal depictions of abuse against the women in this series, but it's always been handled carefully, featuring SA scenes sparingly and not in a graphic manner. It's never sensationalized SA and other abuse against women just for shock value, like other shows have done. But it has shone a light on the kinds of abuse that real women in the world have actually suffered, and it sounded an alarm that if we're not careful and vigilant, such a brutal regime could emerge anywhere in the world and take away the rights of women, including in the United States. In a final scene between June and Luke, once again they're standoffish with each other. She apologizes to Luke for underestimating him as he's doing amazing things in the service of the Mayday resistance. Earlier in the season, she didn't think Luke was capable of battling Gilead effectively, since he wasn't as intimately acquainted with it as her, but he's certainly proven himself now. Luke acknowledges the elephant in the room and points out how much Gilead has changed them both to the point where they don't really know each other like they did before. He tells her that he and Moira are going to New York to prepare for the next Mayday mission. And June says she's going to talk to Tuello, figure out a state-by-state plan, and eventually go get Hannah. Or at least she's going to try. Luke says he'll meet her there. They're going their separate ways in the hope that they can come back together to get their daughter back one day. And once again, echoing what Holly had said earlier, Luke encourages June to write down her escape story, pointing out that it wasn't all horrors. She had people who helped her, like Janine, Emily, Lawrence, and Nick, people who loved her and who she loved, and they're worth remembering. Once again, this is a meta-commentary on the Handmaid's Tale series itself, and it's so true. There were bright spots, even in this darkest of places, uplifting connections that June made with people who helped her. It wasn't simply a tale of relentless suffering. In an incredibly powerful and fitting scene to close out the series and bring it full circle, June returns to the burned-out husk of the original Waterford house where her story on the series once began. She goes to her old bedroom where she'd once written her mantra on the wall before she escaped for a while at the end of season 2. Noli te turbestardes carborundorum, Latin for, don't let the bastards grind you down. That phrase that the previous handmaid in that house had carved into the closet wall before she took her own life, a message for the next handmaid to uplift her. And it's fitting that even though much of the wall burned up after Serena set fire to the house, June's mantra still remains there, and now it's a rallying cry for the revolution. June imagines she's reaching out and holding her daughter Hannah's hand as sunlight emanates from the charred and hole-filled walls. Throughout the series, the art direction has used this unique, exquisite aesthetic of dark rooms with ethereal beams of light coming through windows. And I believe that symbolizes that even in this darkest of places, full of vile abuse, there can still be hope. After initially resisting the arguments of her mother and Luke that she should write a book, June changes her mind and confronts her darkest demons by visiting this space. And as she stands at the window, she begins to dictate her story into a recorder. Then, in a chill-inducing moment, we see a flashback shot of June in front of that same window as a handmaid. This shot directly taken from one of the opening scenes of the premiere episode of the series. And June dictates the same words we had heard as a voiceover back then. Quote, a chair, a table, a lamp, and a window with white curtain. The glass is shatterproof, but it isn't running away they're afraid of. A handmaid wouldn't get far. It's those other escapes, the ones you can open in yourself given a cutting edge or a twisted sheet in a chandelier. I try not to think about those escapes. It's harder on ceremony days, but thinking can hurt your chances. My name is Offred. What an incredible way to bring this series full circle, for June to revisit this very spot where we first met her as a handmaid, renamed Offred, stripped of her real name. And now she begins to tell her story using that same monologue from the premiere episode. She's literally about to write the story we've just been watching for 6 seasons. Instead of burying her trauma and running from it, a common defense mechanism, she's going to dredge it all up and face it by writing down her story. A truly courageous act, and one that will no doubt inspire her daughters and countless other women one day. So there you have it. The Handmaid's Tale has come to an end with this poignant tearjerker of an epilogue after 6 seasons of dystopian hell on earth. Of course, June had to survive the series because the whole point is that she lived at least long enough to tell the story that she's been narrating from the beginning. But she's heading into an uncertain future now, as she will undoubtedly continue to help lead the revolution as long as Hannah remains trapped, even if it may mean eventually losing her life to the cause. As June had said back in season 1, if the Gilead leaders didn't want the handmaids to be an army, they shouldn't have given them a uniform. A line that really takes on a new meaning now, because the handmaids truly have become an army, rising up and joining the revolution with June as their leader. The Handmaid's Tale is so much more than just a dystopian nightmare. More importantly, it's an ode to the indomitable spirit of a woman who refuses to be kept down, a mother who will stop at nothing to save her daughter and fight for every other enslaved woman and child. It's a feminist tale that underscores the fact that women are so much more than mere objects of men's affection or vessels to carry children, and the power that women have when we take a stand and band together against oppression. It's an inspirational but harrowing tale, depicting the indomitable resilience of human beings even in the face of unthinkable cruelty, abuse, and oppression. It's a cautionary tale, warning us never to become complacent with our freedoms, because any society has the potential to become a Gilead that strips us of our human rights and silences our voices. Make no mistake, this could really happen. It's a thought-provoking tale of deeply complex characters like Commander Lawrence, Nick Blaine, and Serena Joy, reminding us that human beings can't be categorized according to a simplistic binary of pure black versus white, good versus evil. It's much more complicated than that. And this tale is truly a work of art, from the aesthetic value of the cinematography, lighting, and art direction, to the visceral and transfixing acting performances, to the incredible direction, musical score, and writing. The harrowing journey we've taken with June will leave an indelible impact on viewers forever. June's tale may seem far-fetched, but women have been subjugated and silenced in societies around the world from the dawn of time and even in the present day. And again, make no mistake, if we don't fight to hold on to our rights, a tale like this could happen and become a reality anywhere in the world, even in the United States. So what do you think about the final chapter of The Handmaid's Tale? Were you satisfied with the ending and what became of our characters? Will you be locked in when the sequel series The Testaments comes out? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on deep diving and let's see what we can uncover together.